Let's dive right into this explainer, which is based on some truly fascinating research by Dr. Faith Anya. We're going to be talking about the hidden, destructive costs of talking way too much about ourselves. I mean, we've all been trapped in situations where a conversation feels completely one-sided, right? Or, well, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, we've probably all occasionally been the person monopolizing the room. Today, we're going to unpack exactly why this habit is so damaging to our personal and professional lives, and more importantly, how we can actually fix it. We all want to be heard, for sure. But I want you to honestly ask yourself if your conversation habits might be unintentionally draining the people around you. Like, are they actually listening or are they just emotionally exhausted? It's incredibly easy to assume that just because people are looking at you and politely nodding, they're fully engaged. But as Dr. Onia's work reveals, there is a massive difference between active listening and emotional exhaustion. All right, Section 1, the conversational trap. Now, there's a really important distinction to make here between true sharing and what we call centering. True sharing is an exchange. It requires mutual vulnerability, and it builds those deep reciprocal bonds we all crave. But centering, that's entirely different. It's like dragging a spotlight around with you. It turns every single interaction into a personal stage where you are the sole performer. And that completely prevents those genuine bonds from ever forming because the conversation becomes entirely about you. The crazy part is, we often fall into this trap with the absolute best of intentions. In our heads, we think monopolizing the conversation shows confidence, right? We think we're sharing valuable insight and building relationships. But the actual impact, it leaves our listeners feeling neglected, devalued, and just totally worn out. Dr. Onya points out that conversations are essentially exchanged goods. When one person hoards the entire supply, the other person feels completely unheard. Let's move on to Section 2, the fallout of oversharing. The fallout of excessive self-focus doesn't just annoy your friends. It actively damages three distinct areas of your life. On a personal level, it causes reduced intimacy and severe social fatigue. Professionally, it literally leads to career stagnation and incredibly inefficient networking, mostly because true networking only succeeds when it's a two-way street. If you only talk about yourself, you completely miss out on building genuine alliances. And psychologically, constantly narrating your own identity breeds anxiety. It makes you hyper-reliant on external validation and incredibly fragile when someone actually criticizes you. And it gets worse. Constantly steering the discourse back to yourself sends a massive signal of entitlement. You're basically telling others that their time and attention are owed to you. Plus, you're missing out on incredible learning opportunities. Conversations are our best source of new ideas, and monopolizing the talk actively narrows your worldview. Professionally speaking, frequent self-promotion without any humility breeds some heavy skepticism from your peers. Finally, if you're always telling repetitive, self-referential stories, it just becomes background noise. So when you actually have an important disclosure later on, people might have already tuned you out. So, Section 3, why do we do it? If the costs are this high, why do we keep doing it? Well, usually, this behavior doesn't come from malice or narcissism. It's actually a defense mechanism. People overshare to gain approval or to signal their status. A lot of times, it's just deep-seated insecurity masquerading as confidence, a constant bravado just to fight off feeling inadequate. We also absolutely have to blame habitual reinforcement. Think about it. Social media platforms literally reward us with visibility and likes for talking about what we ate for breakfast. That trains us to repeat the exact same broadcasting in real life. Couple that with polite peers who rarely set boundaries or give us honest feedback, and the pattern just continues totally unchecked. That brings us to Section 4, the self-talk diagnostic. Time to be brutally honest with yourself. When you finish telling a story, does the group naturally build on it and ask you follow-up questions, or do they immediately pivot away to something entirely different? If they pivot fast, it might be because your story felt like a closed loop that just didn't invite their participation at all. Oh man, this next one is a massive red flag. Please check yourself on this. Are you interrupting a moment of someone else's vulnerability just to relate it back to your own experiences? We often do this thinking we're showing empathy. We say, oh, I know exactly how you feel. The same thing happened to me. But in reality, you're hijacking their moment of need. It's like responding to their bad day at work by talking about how much worse your commute was. You're just putting the spotlight right back on yourself. Think about your last networking event, or maybe the last dinner party you went to. Were you genuinely there to listen, learn, and uncover interesting things about the people around you? Or were you just mentally waiting for your turn to speak so you could broadcast your latest achievements? If you've been explicitly told you dominate conversations, or if you've noticed friends quietly distancing themselves because they find your presence emotionally fatiguing, you need to pay close attention. Social fatigue is a very real, measurable outcome of being around someone who uses interactions as their own personal stage. So, look, if you answered yes to several of these diagnostic questions, you probably do center yourself in conversations. But as Dr. Anya firmly notes, you are absolutely not irredeemable. Awareness is half the battle. Just shining a light on this habit is the very first step, and the fixes are actually quite straightforward once you commit to them. Which perfectly leads us into Section 5, Practical Steps to Change. You can instantly become a more empathetic listener by applying a few incredibly simple rules. First up, force yourself to ask 2 clarifying questions before you share your own related experience. Next, use the 50-50 rule. When you're in a conversation, mentally track the talking time and make sure it's roughly equal. Third, before you even open your mouth, pause and ask yourself, is this about them or is this about me? If it's about you, keep the anecdote to one short, succinct point. And finally, you have to work on replacing that need for external validation with internal values. Ground your self-worth in the attention you give to others rather than the attention you can extract from them. I love this quote because, as Dr. Anya points out, talking about yourself isn't inherently wrong. Personal testimony, transparency, vulnerability, these are absolutely incredible tools for human connection when we use them wisely. The problem is centering. When you make every single interaction a stage for yourself, your credibility and influence will inevitably tank. Intentional restraint, mindful listening, and a genuine curiosity about other people, that's what actually restores balance to your relationships. So I'll leave you with this final thought to reflect on before you step into your next meeting or sit down for dinner with a loved one. Ask yourself, are you there to build a genuine reciprocal connection, or are you just putting on a solo show? The choice is entirely yours, and I promise you, the people around you will absolutely feel the difference.